Chairman, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you tonight in my red star chiffon evening gown, my face softly made up and my fair hair gently waved. The Iron Lady of the Western world.
Margaret Thatcher was not only Britain's first female prime minister, she was also known for her forcefulness and wit. And now a new book goes in depth, revealing how she transformed relations with both allies and adversaries. For more, we welcome from Newsmax New York, Charles Moore, author of Margaret Thatcher at Her Zenith in London, Washington, and Moscow. It is so good to have you tonight, Charles, and let's take it to the here and now. Were Mrs. Thatcher prime minister right now, how do you think she would handle ISIS?
Well, she was always unambiguous about terrorism. She wanted to define it. She knew what it was when she saw it, and she didn't like it. And she was probably the last major Western leader to be ready to confront it rather than appease it. So I think that gives you a pretty clear approach to the whole subject.
Charles, Lady Thatcher reached out to you in 1997 to write her authorized biography. What was it like working with her?
Well, I was worried that when she very kindly did me this honor of asking me to write it, that she would be very interfering, because she's not known for being a lady that steps aside. But she put a very good condition in, which is that she should not be allowed to read the book, and it should not appear in her lifetime. And she did that because otherwise everyone would think she was trying to control it and it would have no historical value. And she really stuck by that rule. I was worried she'd try to breathe down my neck, if you see what I mean, but she didn't. And she fulfilled her side of the bargain, which was she would talk to me a great deal, interviews and so on. And above all, she let me see all her paper, have access to friends and family. I got to the government paper. And so I got a really pretty complete picture. And she was an amazing person to interview, JD, because it was very interesting and very frustrating, because the way she saw an interview was like a political interview on telly. So she wanted to have a battle, and I just wanted to ask her historical questions, but she'd like to turn it into a fight. So she would sort of, if she didn't like the way my questions were going, she'd say, you only say that because you're a socialist, or something like that.
So she treated it more like question time. She treated it like question time in the House of Commons. Wow.
Exactly, and it was hilarious because, you know, we were on good terms and she'd asked me to do this book, but she couldn't get out of that habit. So it could be frustrating when you're trying to get history out of her, but in fact, if you started to bring it all together, you got a wonderful picture of what she really thought about things. And she was, though she was quite a private person, she was also fundamentally an honest person, so she would tell you the way she saw it.
About a minute remains, Charles, and in your book, you discuss Mrs. Thatcher's relationship with President Ronald Reagan. How do you define that relationship?
A friendship forged in adversity before they had office, which grew into something very powerful as an alliance of two like-minded people with very different temperaments. And that meant they could have big disagreements, but they always maintained trust, and they had direction, so that they went from beginning to end of from the height of the Cold War to victory in the Cold War. And that was a great tribute to the way they could work together.
And I will never forget her stately presence at President Reagan's state funeral at the National Cathedral in Washington. She was a remarkable woman in life and in death.
She was very determined to be there. You know, she was in poor health then, and she couldn't actually deliver her speech, but there it was on the tape, and she was absolutely determined to be there to pay her tribute to the president.
A remarkable woman, a remarkable prime minister, and a remarkable new book from Charles Moore. Again, the name of his new work, Margaret Thatcher at Her Zenith, in London, Washington, and Moscow. Available at bookstores everywhere. You will want to make it a point to get this one, and I can hardly wait to read it. Now, you won't have to wait much longer, because we'll be back with more here on Newsmax Prime right after this.